Today, the first episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier dropped on Disney Plus, and there's a lot to talk about. So let's get started. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your thoughts on the first episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. This is a spoiler review, so spoil away down below in the comment section. No need for spoiler warnings, and if you haven't watched the episode yet, you can check out my spoiler-free review right up here. Once you've watched the episode, come and join the discussion over here. The way this is going to work is I'll give my kind of general thoughts on the episode, and then I will dive into kind of the specific plot points throughout the episode. There will be links down below so you can skip ahead to whichever discussion you would like to see. And let's get started with my general thoughts. So as stated in my spoiler-free review, I really enjoyed the first episode. This was one of my most anticipated announced Marvel Disney Plus shows, and it lived up to my expectations. Naturally, because we've seen these characters before and we've kind of seen this genre before, I knew what category to put it in. I knew what to expect in the good way, whereas with WandaVision, man, I just had no clue what I was even looking at. This one, I know what I'm looking at from the trailers, the characters, the genre, and so it was easy for me to kind of set my expectations properly going into it. And it delivered on the things I knew would be there, which would be fantastic action. If anything, maybe the action was even better than I was thinking it was going to be, because like that opening sequence is just so good, so cinematic, and it's not short. It's a long sequence. But what did kind of surprise me is that this just might be the most character-based thing that the MCU has released. I mean, we are going into the day-to-day lives of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. What happens with them the day after they saved the world? What does it look like when he goes home to just spend time with his sister? When this assassin that for years, for decades, had been killing people, and then the war's over, and he just has to process his history and try and adjust to the world. This is kind of the most time we've just spent with characters. And that's one of the cool things about doing TV shows, is that we can just spend time with them in their lives, getting to know them and how the world interacts with them. As you see Falcon going places and they recognize him, he's a celebrity. That's kind of a fun little detail to throw in there. And then we get to the end of it, and I will say this. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I wouldn't say I was disappointed. It gave me what I wanted, but when we did get to the end of the episode, there was a sense of like, oh, that's it? There wasn't like a wow moment that like exceeded my expectations. It wasn't like, oh man, that was amazing win. I couldn't fill in that. I didn't have a single thing. I watched it 2 times and went, yeah, I don't have any negatives. Like, I don't have any flat negatives for this show. But it also didn't have like that big wow moment. And so I dug it. It's what I wanted, but it lived up to the expectations without exceeding necessarily my expectations. And maybe even some of that is the nature of the show, is that essentially this is part 1 of 6 of a 4 or 5 hour long movie. So you're just watching the first half of the first act of a story, which is all set up. And when you get to the end of that first half of the first act, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have something big there. So the episode kind of ends without a big showdown, without a big gigantic fight. And the big reveal that you get was essentially in the trailers. Like, they announced this stuff earlier that the government's chosen successor is it's not Falcon. Like, you see that in the trailer, that someone else picks up the mantle, I guess, as U.S. agent. And so we knew that. So when they do that big reveal, it wasn't one that, for me, as someone that's watched the trailers, the tracks along, it was like, oh, wow. No, because the first half of the episode showed Falcon handing the shield over, which is interesting in light of what we've seen in the trailer with him having the shield, using the shield in a bunch of shots in the trailer. So I don't know what that means. But, I mean, we see him turn it over. So when you do a reveal at the end where it's like someone else has it, it's like, well, right, that was in the trailer. So that's not the most wow-inducing moment. So once again, like, none of that's to say that it didn't like in any way diminish my excitement for the show as a whole or anything like that. It's just to make the point that it didn't necessarily, I got to the end of it and I just didn't go, yeah, wow. it wasn't that sort of ending to the episode. It was like, okay, yeah, that as piece number one, that was pretty cool. And I continue having this thought in my head with all of these Marvel Disney Plus shows of, would they work better with an alternative release model? And I don't know. My favorite thing about WandaVision was watching it as kind of this ritual with my family, watching it, and then doing a video and having the conversation about it. But because of that ritual, it also led to theorizing and stuff that's kind of disappointing. In its own way with this one, it's like, I dug everything they were giving me. I want more. And I wonder if they'd given me kind of a bigger chunk, would have made a bigger impact. If they did a hybrid model of releasing 2 episodes per week all the way throughout the runtime. So run it for a month as opposed to running it for 2 months or 6 weeks or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, a very solid kickoff. Love spending time with these characters. Fantastic action. And I can't wait to see the next episode. So episode kicks off with Falcon on a mission where basically terrorist guys led by George St. Pierre returning from the returning from the Winter Soldier, no Falcon in the name of that movie. So his character is returning. He's trying to kidnap a guy. Falcon is sent in to see if they're taken hostage, if they've gotten control yet. He flies onto this plane, looks through the window, realizes, oh, they've already got control of this deal. So he needs to go into action. He's supposed to keep it low key, and the villains are trying to get across a national border to an area where troops can't go in because that would be very bad. So there's a ticking clock for him to be able to rescue this guy before things go down. And it's just a great action sequence. And as I was watching it, I just immediately thought, I can't believe that we can do this for television right now. That this is a week-to-week show. And it really is a different model from the 22 episode, on broadcast television. It's different. It's a different definition of television, but this is a week-to-week episodes, and this action sequence is just bananas. Like, he's flying through the air in a way that you couldn't even have done that for a movie 25 years ago and had it look as good as this. Flies into the plane and gets in this fight with all these guys, and, I mean, he's using his wings, he's using it as a shield, he's doing all the cool stuff, hand-to-hand combat. You can follow the geography of the fight, like it's a really cool fight sequence. He's throwing guys towards the door so they get sucked out. I mean, every cool thing that you would want to have happen in that sequence ends up happening, and he goes to rescue the guy, but there's a lot of guys he has to fight off, so George St. Pierre is able to give him a couple kicks, gets the upper hand, and runs off with the guy, jumps out the window. That leads into a chase sequence with guys in raccoon suits while Falcon is using his Falcon suit with battle helicopters. And so, I mean, they're flying through a valley, and all of it looks totally real. All of it is totally convincing. There's nothing about it that you're like, yeah, they did the best they could on a TV budget. No, I mean, this just looks like it came straight out of an MCU movie. State-of-the-art technology, just phenomenal little sequence. And, flying through valleys, flying in through helicopters, being chased by missiles, helicopters exploding. I mean, all the stuff that you want, all leading up to like right before the moment where they're about to cross the line. He's able to get his backpack working again, grabs the guy. George St. Pierre jumps out. So he didn't die. He didn't die. I watched it twice. And so I double checked it the second time. He jumps out in his raccoon suit into the middle of a desert. So he's in the middle of nowhere, but he didn't get blown up. And Falcon is able to rescue the guy and for him to live to see another day, and we're not going into war over crossing the boundaries. So it kind of leads into this next sequence where Falcon is sitting there kind of working on his tech, and the guy that's assisting him walks up and starts talking to him about what they're trying to do, giving him the rundown on some stuff. And I don't know the comic book history at all, but apparently the guy that he's interacting with in the comics eventually becomes a Falcon type character. He's got a history that leads in that direction. And so it's like just even incorporating him is a little hint for where they might be going, where this could end, how the mantles could be passed around throughout the season. I thought they had a nice little rapport, though. They had a nice vibe to them that felt real, organic to it. And throughout the scene, techie guy, he's doing research and kind of pulling up, and there's like this hand symbol on the wall where he's researching this group that's this big threat that they need to look into that, of course, looks like it's going to be the threat for the season or one of the many threats of the season. And Meanwhile, the whole time, Falcon's working on his stuff. And while they're doing this, kind of random guy looks over and sees Falcon there. And he's like, hey, Avengers, you brought my wife back. He's just like so happy to see him. And Falcon knows how to say thank you in his language. And I love those little touches that address the reality of it, which is to say, if these guys were out there, if these are like this team of people saved the world and brought back 4 billion people, there's 4 billion people out there that are like, you brought my loved ones back. Like, they would be the heroes. Everybody would know who they are. And so Falcon, he's just sitting there working on his tech, and the guy just sees, like, oh, and it's the same as seeing as a celebrity. And so I just like those nice little details that run all throughout the whole episode, that he's doing totally normal things, and people see him and spot him and want to thank him for what he was doing. So then this ends up leading into the section that I imagine is what Falcon's arc is for the season, of trying to figure out what his place in the world is and his identity. And it was fully established, the tension in him at the end of Endgame, where Captain America, Steve, gives him the shield, and he says it feels like it's someone else's. And Steve says it's not. And this even led to now 2 years of debates on the internet of like, well, Steve should have given it to Bucky. But Steve didn't give it to Bucky. Steve gave it to Sam. And so the internet has been divided as to whether Steve did the right thing. Falcon is still divided over this, and it leads to this segment where he decides that he's going to turn it into this museum. And they want a symbol, and this shield is a symbol, and so he's thanked for doing this. He gives a little speech, but he hands it over, and Rhodey's in the room watching this. And so afterwards they have a conversation, and Rhodey does not seem to understand this decision. He did like, why didn't you take it up? Like, someone needs to take it. He's like, I don't feel like I'm that guy. I don't feel like I'm that guy. And that's where this show, you start to realize just how character based it is. You go through this episode, and we tease the future coming terrorist group, but the conflict that's put front and center in the first episode is Falcon's internal struggle as to whether he believes that he's Captain America or not, whether he accepts what Steve said, or whether if he goes with his own view of himself. That's the conflict that's front and center in the first episode, not Helmut Zemo, like, I'm going to blow up a city. That's not front and center. He doesn't even show up yet. And so we just have little references, like the main villains are side characters. We're laying the groundwork. We're setting it up. But front and center is his conflict internally, and he's called out by Rhodey, and he's still like, I don't think I'm the right guy to do it. So he leaves it be. Then let's start talking about Bucky, who kicks off our first segment with him is him having a nightmare about one of his Winter Soldier missions where he goes in. Quick little action sequence where he just takes a bunch of guys out, shoots a guy that's trying to open a door that doesn't seem to have anything to do with it. He just takes everyone out in the room, kills this one guy, and then Bucky wakes up laying on the floor, clearly having a nightmare, and then he goes to meet up with his therapist, psychiatrist, person evaluating him. And it's a fun little interaction because it's not remotely, the lady's not remotely like the typical movie therapist that just kind of lets the person talk. Like, she's just calling him out constantly on his crap. She knows that she's talking to an actual assassin, that he's not, he has his own fragilities and vulnerabilities, but this is not a guy that you beat around the bush with. He should be doing things. He's not doing them. He's not being honest. So she's like writing things, she's doing everything to kind of provoke him into talking. And so it played different than the way these scenes normally play, which leads to just the right amount of like natural humor that builds off the character that we've seen from him before, that he's got a little bite to him. He's got a little snark to him. He's calling out passive aggressive stuff. He misrepresents some things that took place while being just a little bit honest and vulnerable. So he tells this story about taking out a senator person that was put in place by Hydra. So just nice little details where he changed some stuff to fit the rules of what his assignment, of what he was supposed to do to make amends. But at the same time, in the case of this person, he was trying to like get the person back. nice little touches that I appreciated. So the dynamic there is nice. Once again, also setting up his character's journey. We're spending a bunch of time with him and realizing like his journey is he has to work through all that stuff in the past, pull out all the weeds and come to terms with who he is. And he's not defined by his past. He's not defined by what he was forced to do, but he has to get that stuff out of him so he can move forward. And it establishes that very early right here, this first episode. And that kind of leads into this little mini plot that we have about him making friends with an Asian man and kind of hanging out with the guy, and the guy's trying to set him up with the girl, and him being 106, being very old fashioned in his ways, is like, wait, this guy's just setting me up. That's not how you're supposed to do this stuff. And you're realizing, Bucky hasn't gone on a date since the 40s. You stop and think about it. It's like, right, when he was an assassin, he probably wasn't doing a lot of dating. So yeah, it's been since the 40s. He doesn't know how things work now. And even though he's been not on the ice anymore for 5 years or so, it's been in Wakanda and on the run, like nothing normal since the 40s. And the 40s were World War II, so that wasn't normal. So it's been a long time. And so just all these little things that we see a guy that's my age, because Sebastian Stan, he's about my age. So we see a guy that looks like he was born around 1980. No, he was born in 1917, the year that my grandfather was born. And so that plays that really nicely for laughs, as he both says things that are honest, that feel like he's making a joke when he's not, and he doesn't even know when he's intentionally doing it or not, and his weird, awkward reactions to it are great. And then other times he gives dishonest answers to kind of cover up for it, and those themselves turn out to be quite funny. But we kind of learned that this guy that he's meeting with, his son, disappeared mysteriously, and the guy's sad about it. Now, I don't know if maybe other people, as they were watching this, they put it together faster than I did, that where this was headed. I didn't put it together. Maybe it was just invested enough in trying to figure out where things were going and I didn't put together what was happening here. So old man sets him up with a date with the girl. He shows up to go on a date with the girl. And this is where you get a bunch of the funny jokes where she's like, how old are you actually? If you don't know how to use dating apps? I'm 106. And then you realize, okay, I can't give answers like that. I wear a glove over my circulation. Then they start playing Battleship and start giving answers and stuff, where she starts diving into the fact that the old man is just really sad because he lost his son, and the fact that he doesn't have answers. And then it clicks in, and he just gets up, walks up and leaves and goes to the guy's apartment. And you go, oh, he's there to make amends. He's not there randomly. That's not some random guy. This isn't some guy in his neighborhood where he's just trying to be nice to people. No, he's there because he killed the guy's son. And the guy's son is the guy that was there at the scene earlier. Maybe I'm dense. I didn't put that together as I was first watching it, and I was just invested in it. But I just thought that was like a really nice little arc. Simple little glimpse of what he's dealing with. That Bucky is a good man and has always himself been a good man. He's not an assassin killing guys' sons for no reasons. But he was kidnapped. He was stolen. His mind and body were stolen. And he was sent to do things that he would never do. And now he has to go and make amends. And there's something very profound about that. That for him to move forward, he has to own up to what he did, even though it's not his fault that he did it. And that's brutal. That's a rough thing to do, especially when it's like a man. You just look staring at this man who's empty because he lost his son. And you're responsible for it in a sense, even though you're not actually responsible for it at all. And so that's where we just look at how character based this whole thing was, that you're just spending time with them with, this 25-minute plot line that you can never put in a movie. That's what's so cool about these shows. You can spend that much time with them. And that leads us to Falcon's family plot line, where he goes to see his sister. His sister was not blipped. Obviously he was. And they had a house and a shrimping boat that they share ownership of them. She, having lived through the last 5 years and knowing the financials and being the day-to-day person running all of this, wants to sell the boat. She loses money on it, and he's like, no, you can't do this. This is what we grew up with. And it's a little bit tough to, like, when we're just kind of thrown into it, naturally we agree with him because he's the guy we know. But if you're looking at the logic on what's actually in front of you, like, he's being a little bit unreasonable. Now, maybe she should have asked for help and been a little bit more open to him trying to work a few things before coming to this conclusion. But she's been the person trying to run this deal for 5 years, and he doesn't seem to be acknowledging that as much as he probably should in this situation. But a very, very organic brother-sister relationship and a very real tension. As someone who, my dad died when I was 20, and there was an inheritance related to that. My grandparents died, on my dad's side, died about 10-ish years ago. And there's inheritance related to that. And it leads to these awkward things of what do you do with this thing that means so much to you or meant so much to them? And you have different conflicting views on it. It's very normal human stuff to deal with as grown-ups and adults. And so you literally have Sam going from saving the world, flying, chasing terrorists, to then handing over the shield related to this guy that once again saved 4 billion people. I mean, like, Captain America saved 4 billion people. And he's handing over the shield. I mean, these are just unworldly things that none of us can relate to in any reasonable sense. He goes straight from that to he's with his sister and they're just trying to decide what to do with their inheritance. And that's interesting. That, like, once again, that human level, that ground level, day to day, what do you do the day after you save the world? That's tough to do in any detail in a movie. You can't make a movie that has 20-minute sequence about Falcon meeting up with his sister to discuss a boat. So this leads to him, like, wanting to be Mr. Fix-It, talks her into going to the bank one more time. They go to the bank, and the guy at the bank is just the worst. Oh, he's just like the worst combination of traits, where he's the fanboy. So, oh, you're Falcon? Can I get your... And he just, like, immediately starts taking selfies with him and stuff. But he's not being remotely helpful to Sam the person. You see Sam the celebrity hero and has some questions related to that, but he's not trying to help Sam the person there with the sister and a boat and an inheritance. And he's saying a bunch of really stupid stuff, interjecting in the middle of it, like, hey, can I get a selfie with you putting your arms up? And he's just like, oh, please stop. And when I first watched it, I was like, I don't know, is the guy overwritten? Is it? And at the same time, you hear any celebrities tell story, like, people are like this. They don't have they can be that dense. They are that clueless. They are that ridiculous. And I think the other thing that was interesting about the sequence is that you start wondering about the actual, what would the financial world be like post-blip? And all the metrics by which you determine a bank loan would be wildly different. Everyone's trying to rebuild after all this stuff happened. Everyone wants money from the banks. And you have even a celebrity comes in and goes, hey, it's me. But they're like, yeah, but, like, you have no income for 5 years. Like, all of our ways that we've calculated this stuff is based off income. You don't have any income. And the scene, the guy, like, maybe the scene could have been better to have the guy making a more compelling argument that doesn't make him come off fully stupid, as if he said it as if he didn't know why the guy was missing. And I think maybe they should have done just a little bit. Maybe that's my one negative. I wish that this guy had a few more moments of intelligence in the way he articulated this, because there's such an interesting concept in there of how does the world banking function in a world where some of this stuff is happening, but they don't get the loan. And so Falcon, hero, celebrity guy, hero, part of saving the world, can't get a loan. It's just such a human conflict for someone to have to deal with. So then, parallel to this, his partner from the beginning of it follows the hand symbol thing, goes to an event where they hand out masks, and then the guy that I guess is the leader of whoever these masked people are jumps out of building onto the ground, drops 2 bags, and with the people with the masks are supposed to create the diversion for him to be able to escape or her to be able to escape. Whoever it is, they're wearing a mask, we never see the person's face. And in the middle of it, he tries to arrest the leader of the group, and the person just lays the smack down on him. I mean, this person is throwing people around left and right crazy and clearly super powered. Runs off. So he calls Sam and they have a little breakdown. I mean, he got beat up, but he's hurt, but he's fine. And, you know, they're learning stuff, but they don't have much to go on. So then the episode closes out with Sam. He's at home processing all this stuff. His sister walks in and says, hey, you got to check this out. And they turn on the news, and basically on the news, they reveal the new Captain America, U.S. agent with the shield, Wyatt Russell. This is the son of Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn, who's someone that grew up watching Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell. It's fun to see their son now as guy in these shows, and he looks like a total goober, but he's the new Captain America according to the government. And so Sam is just kind of feels the sink in his soul that this happened. This is in the trailer, so it wasn't a big reveal because it was like as soon as they said you got to check this out and they're announcing something, if you saw the trailer you kind of knew where this was headed. And so like in terms of if it was we'd seen the whole thing, I don't think this ending point would be a big issue, but as a first episode you kind of want something that has a little bit more punch and pop to it. And that's the only kind of disappointment in that regard. So as some closing thoughts, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Getting to spend time with MCU characters in their day-to-day lives and see them as people, not just as sidekicks, not just as heroes, but as humans in this world and getting even the day-to-day life of the world of the MCU. I appreciated all of that. The production value is through the roof, and it's laying the foundation, taking its time. So I dug it. I'm thoroughly can't wait till next week, which naturally I was always probably going to love the show because I love these characters. I love the MCU. I love spy action shows. So I'm the target audience and I got what I wanted. Can't wait for next week. And I'm sure I'm going to end up loving this entire show. Let me know what you thought down below in the comment section. How do you compare it to WandaVision? It's tough to do because they're so different in their approaches to everything, as I discussed in my non-spoiler review, and keep talking movies and TV too much.